wondering, I don't remember Joseph ever getting married. Now he's got 2 sons.
He got married to two of the Egyptian girls that Potiphar, that the priest of Onan gave him.
Okay, I don't remember that in the story. So
That's because I pontificate too much. You forgot the details. I know I should tell the story. He had 2 children. He had 1 wife, 2 children.
Okay.
And he named them Ephraim, Manasseh.
So he did not marry a...
No, he had a non-Jewish wife. So have hope for all of you whose children don't always marry Lutherans. It doesn't work out all right sometimes. Apparently Joseph's case is it. What's that?
They are getting blessed.
They are getting blessed. That's a good point. I want to look at that next phrase, verse 16. The angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Bless these boys, and in them let my name be carried on. In the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, let them grow to a multitude in the midst of the earth. The angel, who's that? Yeah, we'd say Jesus today, although back there he was not known as Jesus. The angel of the Lord is that great messenger. We run into this mysterious character, I think, first of all, in the days of Abraham. You remember that story? Abraham's concubine wife, Sarah gives him to carry on his name because Sarah can't get pregnant, and her name is Hagar. And Hagar has a son named Ishmael. And Sarah, when she gets when she gets pregnant and has her son Isaac, Hagar and Ishmael make fun of her and Isaac, as the story goes. And so Sarah says, "Get them out of here, lest they mess up my boy's inheritance." And so God tells Abraham, "Go ahead and do it." So he drives Hagar out. By the way, St. Paul picks up that story later, saying that we Gentiles are children of the free woman, not the slave. He picks that up in the book of Galatians, another story. Anyway, as Hagar and Ishmael are out there wandering around in the desert, the angel of the Lord appears to her and shows her a fountain of water, and they end up living. We run into this mysterious figure, of course, on Mount Sinai. That's the most famous story. He appears in the book of Judges several times to Gideon. He appears also to, I can't remember this judge's name now. But it always, this mysterious figure, this messenger from God, is always identified as being God. Which, of course, the Jews, the Old Testament never is bothered by this. The Old Testament writers don't seek to explain it. By the way, way later, the prophets, you get to the book of Malachi, which is the last writing prophet in the Old Testament. And remember, this messenger from God has been popping up throughout Old Testament history. You get to the prophet Malachi, and God says, talks about the angel, the messenger from God, whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple. The messenger you are looking for. And you know, the Jews always understood that messianically. That referred to the great Messiah, until I think probably, I'm just guessing, probably when the Christians started using that and getting a lot of mileage out of that, and then they get all mixed up on it. But the Old Testament, I think, never tries to explain this, just assumes that God is singular and plural all the time. You've got this singularity of God, and yet you've got this plurality in God. God sending a messenger, who is God, and yet there are not 2 of them. This angel of the Lord, this messenger from God, is God himself, whom we call the second person of Jesus. Enough said on that. He redeemed me. There's a critical word. I want to comment on the word redeem. That word pops up in the book of Exodus. Let me find it here real quick. Let's see here. Yeah, if you look up Exodus 6, verse 6, the word redeem is used very often in the Old Testament. It is used to describe God's saving activity of his people at what locale? The Red Sea. And it brings up the whole history of salvation of God's people there in Egypt. I have the text here. I'm going to read it. You can follow along. Say to the people of Israel, this was at the Red Sea. Let's see, are they at the Red Sea yet? This is where they're going to be at the Red Sea. So he's going to redeem his people. I am the Lord, I am Yahweh. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery, and I will, there's the word, redeem you. And back in the book of Genesis, chapter 48, when Joseph, or Jacob, says, the Lord who redeemed me, that word is picked up, I think, by Moses, and it's picked up later in the book of Exodus, and you have these little hooks verbal hooks that keep the story tied together. That the redemption of Jacob always previewed a much greater redemption to come. That God would work through the greater Israel, the people. And if you're following this, I think that's why his name has changed from Jacob early in this chapter to Israel, because we are now not just talking about the history of an individual. We are talking about Heilsgeschichte, the history of a salvation for a people, namely God's people. And it comes to fruition there in Egypt, when God will now redeem his people by an outstretched arm. By the way, very anthropomorphic language. Anthropos means man in Greek. Morphe means form. Anthropomorphic language means language used to describe God that is in very human terms. An outstretched arm, as God flexes his muscles and reaches down into Egypt, very graphic verbal language, visual language, and grabs his people by the scruff of the neck and pulls them out of captivity. And Pharaoh and all his troops can do nothing about it. Because when God stretches out his arm, he is a powerful God. He is Yahweh, the one who makes it all happen. Looking back at the text, chapter 48. By the way, if you get comments, interrupt me. I don't think I'll say anything else on the rest of that. Verse 17 and following, Joseph gets upset when he sees his father crossing his arms. Verse 19, the father refuses to change his arms back. By the way, I think Joseph supposes that his father, who is now blind, has made a mistake here. Jacob did not make a mistake. And he knew, even though he's blind, I imagine, that Joseph would have put the oldest son under his right hand. And so he crosses his hands purposely. Joseph gets upset with that. His father refuses to change his mind. Verse 19, I know my son, I know he shall also become a people, shall be great. Nevertheless, the younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations. And there, of course, you have the idea that the younger serves the older, and that's just the way God tends to work. And in a sense, Jacob here, then, as he goes on, pronounces at verse 20, as he gives these special blessings to Joseph's son, is actually confirming what he had, which has kind of been going on behind the scenes through the whole story, that Joseph is considered to be the eldest son, as he blesses Joseph's sons, not the others. He blessed them that day. By you, Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. He put Ephraim before Manasseh. The word Ephraim means, you remember that one? To be fruitful. Interesting wordplay there. And he named his son Ephraim in Egypt because he believed that God will make me fruitful. Which, by the way, shows the tremendous faith of Joseph, who was able to name his sons. People always gave names to their children that said something theologically, either about their birth, about their future, about the people they were serving, whatever the case may be. So he names his son Ephraim, even though they are living in Egypt, because he knows that God will be faithful to his promise. He will bring us back to the land, to the promised land, and will make us fruitful there in his own time. By the way, how long would it take for God to keep that promise? Over 400 years. Over 400 years. And think of the questions that must have gone through the people's minds in Egypt. Exodus chapter 1, as a new king rises over Egypt, which did not know Joseph, and puts them under slavery. And then Moses comes along to deliver them, and Pharaoh gets angry and increases their problems, spreads a lot more manure on their lives. And that the people, that there were still some people that held on to God's promise for 400 years is an incredible thing. How long are you going to live? 90 years maybe? You're whining because God doesn't always do everything great for you in 90 years? Could have been 400 years, you see. And who says that you're supposed to be prosperous in this world every day of your life? Who says that? And that we are may not be the greatest blessing of God, by the way. Because sometimes prosperity isn't good for us. And I bring you back to the theme of the Lenten season. That was one of the reasons the church celebrated Lent and why we as Lutherans should get back to it too. It's a time when we reevaluate our lives. Are we finding our hope